anointed and put a child in your life, and it is your job to raise them. And it does not matter what the situation is. If you are not with the mother of your child, so what? That's not an excuse. You do whatever is necessary to spend time with your child, because there are some things only you can teach. But don't get too excited, sisters, because I got a word for you. When the brother wants to see his child, don't use the child like some shield because you got a problem with him. The child had nothing to do with your 5 minutes of experience with the brother. All they want is their father in the picture. And we need to stop using our children like a tennis ball, bouncing them back and forth, trying to hurt somebody, and the child had nothing to do with any of this. And I stop by here to say that God has not called anyone to forsake their children. I don't care what job you have. I know for many of us, younger preachers, Reverend Aaron, we get excited. You get an invitation somewhere and you preaching here and preaching there. But your children will get older eventually. And you're going to miss out on opportunities when they learn how to walk and learn how to ride a bike, their first day of school, when they learn how to read. Are you going to remember all the places you've been all over the world? No. But you will remember that time when your child put their arms around you and called you daddy for the first time. You will remember that time when you taught them how to walk. And I'm here. I want to know if there are any fathers, are there any black men up in here that you want to raise your child to a different standard, that God is calling us to do something that will break the cycle of violence and pain in our families. And I'm here to let you know that as brothers, we've got to stand up and be the kind of men that God is calling us to be. Is there anybody in here? Do I have any brothers in the house who are willing to be fathers? Your children may ask for your money, but they really want your time. And so David was a great leader, but a despicable father. And when the history books are written, how do you want them to write you? As an amazing accountant, an incredible worker, or even if you may not have all the accolades publicly, when you know that your children know that you were there when they needed you, will be the greatest thing that will enter into your spirit. That God did not call us in any way, shape, or form to ever forsake our families. And David chose the kingdom over his kids because David confused his appointment with his anointing. He thought that the geographical location of Israel as king, that was the anointing. When God consecrates you, wherever you go, you're anointed. You don't have to be in one particular location. If God has a purpose in your life, wherever you are is your anointing, not necessarily your location. Your location can change. You can be unemployed and still be anointed. You cannot have money in the bank and still be anointed. You may not be able to pay your rent, but you can still be anointed. It's not about your appointment. It means that anointing is that which works inside of you. But some of us think of it as ointment and not anointing. We look at it as an external topical solution that we place upon our bodies. That will come off as soon as trouble starts. But anointing is that which works inside of you. And David thought, yes, my anointing is here in Israel. No, you need to take care of Tamar. You need to take care of Absalom. You need to deal with Amnon. You need to handle Solomon. You need to deal with your family. You need to deal with your children. Because if you pass on the right values to your children, your great legacy will not necessarily be where you live, but what you pass on to the next generation. How do you think many of us have arrived where we are right now? Not because our parents had great riches, not because our grandparents were so wealthy. They had a value system in them, and they passed it on to us. And the reason that we are where we are right now is because they passed on a great legacy to us. And David was confused his appointment with his anointing. And this seems to be a tragic story as we read about the life of David. But I must bid you good day. But there is some interesting news here in this text. That with all the trouble that we have seen in this text, there's something else here that you must see. That God gives a resolution here. Because it seems to make no theological sense, Joy. How can you be called a man after God's heart? With all the dirt you done did. How can you be called a man after God's heart with all the mess you've been involved with? But David understands that when he ever gets in trouble, that David never stopped being a worshiper. David knew how to worship. But see, part of our problem is that we have messed up the idea of worship because we think worship is about a shout and a dance. Worship is about you hollering and running. Your worship sometimes may have a shout and sometimes may have a dance, but sometimes you must learn how to worship and weep at the same time. That you must learn how to bring your tears to worship. And there are moments when you enter into the sanctuary, when you look back over all of the mess that you've been involved in, and yet God is still walking with you, that you are a survivor, that you have been broken, but yet you have not been defeated, and here you are. And sometimes it is not a shout that comes out of your spirit, it is tears that stream down your face because you remember all of the mess you have been in. You remember the temptations that when they came in front of you, you took every chance to deal with whatever was in front of you, but by the grace of God, you have made it through, and that's why you run to get into the house of God, because if it had not been for the Lord on your side, you would be dead. And I don't know if there's anybody up in here that you know that if it had not been I'm not talking about that cute kind of worship. You think you so cute with your pity pat praise. I'm talking about that ugly kind of worship where tears come down from your eyes, where you throw your hands up and say, Lord, I thank you for saving me. I don't know why you keep me, but you do it anyhow. David could worship and weep at the same time, because David remembers the dirt he did. And that's why David wrote in the 51st Psalm, have mercy on me according to thy loving kindness. That's why David says, create in me a clean heart, because I know how dirty I've been. Renew a right spirit within me. Don't you look at me funny like your spirit's always been right, like your heart's always been clean. I'm here to let you know, if you've lived on this planet, you've done some dirt, I've done some dirt, but thanks be to God, we serve a God. David was a true worshiper. He was always after God's heart. It's always, wherever God is, he's after it. And God said, I like somebody who's chasing after me.